For my 33rd birthday, my mother-in-law Genevieve gifted me divorce papers wrapped in a manila envelope while we sat at the most expensive table in Atlanta. From all of us, she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed dining room of the Sapphire. My husband Darius did not defend me. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started recording a video light gleaming off the camera lens as he waited for my tears. He wanted a viral moment of my humiliation for their group chat. I looked at the papers, then at the camera, and instead of crying, I picked up my pen. I thanked her, signed the documents immediately, and walked out without shedding a single tear. She had no idea that by forcing my hand, she had just activated the biggest financial trap in Georgia history. Before I tell you how I took down the Sterling dynasty with a single signature, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to smile while your heart was breaking. The air inside. The Sapphire was cold enough to preserve meat, which was fitting because I was about to be served up on a platter. We were seated in the private alcove of Buckhead's most exclusive restaurant, surrounded by velvet drapes and the low hum of old money. This was the Sterling family's natural habitat. My mother-in-law Genevieve sat at the head of the table looking like a queen who had just ordered an execution. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my first car, and her eyes tracked every movement of the waiters with predatory precision. To her right sat my husband Darius, who looked less like a real estate executive and more like a terrified child waiting for his allowance. Across from me were my sister-in-law Bianca and her husband Chad. Chad was the only white person at the table, and he wore his privilege like a heavy cologne. He leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of scotch that was older than me, and looked at me with a smirk that made my skin crawl. So, Nia, Chad said, his voice loud enough to turn heads at the nearby tables. 33 years old. That is a big number for someone from your background. I heard the life expectancy in the neighborhoods you grew up in isn't much higher than that. I sliced my steak, slowly refusing to look at him. My background was a sore subject for the Sterlings. I grew up in a small apartment on the south side, while they grew up in gated mansions with staff. I had worked my way through college on scholarships and grit, becoming a forensic accountant, while Darius coasted through life on his mother's connections. Be nice, Chad, Genevieve said, though her tone lacked any real reprimand. Nia has done well for herself considering the disadvantages of her upbringing. We are here to celebrate her after all. She raised her glass of champagne, the bubbles catching the light of the crystal chandelier. To Nia, Genevieve continued her smile, not quite reaching her eyes. A toast to the girl who proved that you can take the girl out of the struggle, even if you can never quite take the struggle out of the girl. We have tolerated your presence in our family for 5 years now, and that is an achievement in itself. Darius chuckled, a low, nervous sound. I looked at him, waiting for him to defend his wife. Waiting for him to tell his mother that her backhanded compliment was cruel. But Darius just sipped his drink, his eyes fixed on the tablecloth. He was 35 years old, but in the presence of his mother, he reverted to a toddler. You guys are too much, Bianca chimed in, giggling. She adjusted the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, a gift from her mother paid for by the company accounts I managed. Nia knows we are just playing. Right, Nia? You have to have thick skin to marry into this family. I took a sip of water, my hand perfectly steady. I have thick skin, Bianca. I deal with financial fraud and corporate theft for a living. Insults from people who cannot balance a checkbook do not faze me. The table went silent. Chad stopped swirling his drink. Genevieve's eyes narrowed into slits. Is that gratitude I hear? Genevieve asked, her voice dropping an octave. After everything we have given you, the roof over your head, the car you drive, the clothes on your back, you walk around like you earned these things, Nia, but do not forget who signs the checks. I wanted to scream. I wanted to scream that I was the one who saved Sterling Properties from bankruptcy 3 years ago. I wanted to scream that the roof over my head was paid for by the tax loopholes I found for them. I wanted to scream that the car I drove was 5 years old, while Chad drove a new Porsche leased on company credit. But I stayed silent. I was a forensic accountant. I knew that in any investigation, you do not show your hand until you have all the evidence. I apologize, Genevieve, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I am grateful for everything the Sterling family has exposed me to. She seemed satisfied with my submission. Good, because we have a special gift for you tonight. A milestone birthday deserves a milestone gift. She reached under the table and pulled out a large manila envelope. It was thick, heavy, and completely unadorned. No ribbon, no wrapping paper, just a stark yellow envelope that screamed business. She tossed it onto the center of the table. It landed with a heavy thud right between the floral centerpiece and my untouched bread plate. Open it, Genevieve commanded. I reached for the envelope. My fingers brushed the paper and I felt a strange vibration in the air. The servers had stepped back into the shadows. The music seemed to dim. It felt like the moment before a car crash when you know impact is inevitable, but you cannot look away. Darius suddenly moved. He pulled his phone out of his jacket pocket and held it up the camera lens pointing directly at my face. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Capturing the moment, Darius said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Mom said this is going to be a memory we want to keep." I looked at Chad. He was leaning forward eagerly, his elbows on the table. "Go on, Nia," he goaded. "See what Daddy and Mommy got you. I bet it is a one-way ticket back to the hood." I tore open the envelope. Inside, there was a stack of legal documents stapled together with a blue cover sheet. I pulled them out, and the bold black letters at the top of the page punched me in the gut. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I froze. The words swam before my eyes. Divorce papers. On my birthday, at a dinner party. I looked up at Darius. He was still filming, the red recording light blinking like a warning signal. He wasn't looking at me with love or even regret. He was looking at his screen, checking the framing, ensuring the lighting was good enough for whatever group chat he planned to send this to. "Surprised," Genevieve said, clapping her hands together once. "We thought it was time to correct a mistake we made 5 years ago. You never belonged here, Nia. You were a temporary lapse in judgment. A diversity hire for our family photo album. But the contract is up." I looked back down at the papers. My eyes scanned the legal jargon with the speed of someone who reads contracts for a living. It was brutal. It was a total annihilation. The terms were clear. I was to leave the marital home within 24 hours. I would receive 0 alimony. I would have no claim to any future earnings of Sterling properties. I would leave with only the personal items I brought into the marriage, which meant my old clothes and my student loan debt. "You signed a prenuptial agreement," Bianca reminded me, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Remember, we made sure of that." "You leave with nothing." Chad laughed, a barking sound that echoed in the room. "Nothing personal, babe. It is just business. You were a bad investment. Low yield, high maintenance, time to liquidate." I looked at Darius again. "Say something," I whispered. "Please, tell me this is a sick joke." Darius lowered the phone slightly, but he did not stop recording. "It is not a joke, Naya. Mom is right. We are just different. You are always working, always talking about budgets and audits. You are boring. And honestly, you're embarrassing me. My friends have wives who know how to relax, who know how to spend money, not just count it. I want a wife, not a compliance officer." The cruelty of it took my breath away. I had spent 5 years cleaning up his messes. I had hidden his gambling debts. I had fixed his credit score. I had managed the properties he was too lazy to visit. I was boring because I was the only adult in the room. Genevieve leaned forward, her face a mask of triumph. "There is a pen in the envelope, dear. Sign it. Save us the cost of a process server. If you sign now, we will let you keep the car. If you fight us, we will bury you in legal fees until you are living in a shelter." I looked at the pen. It was a cheap plastic ballpoint. Fitting. Inside my chest, my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The humiliation was burning my face hot and sharp. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to throw the wine in Chad's face. I wanted to slap Darius until he dropped that phone. But then my training kicked in. I'm a forensic accountant. I deal with facts, not feelings. I look for the hidden numbers, the buried secrets, the leverage that no one else sees. And as I looked at Genevieve's smug face, a single fact crystallized in my mind. She had forgotten the paperwork she signed 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Sterling Properties was drowning. Chad had embezzled funds through a shell company, and the IRS was circling. To save the company and qualify for a massive government grant reserved for minority female-owned businesses, Genevieve had begged me to help. She had signed over 51% of the company's stock to me. She thought it was just on paper, a nominee agreement she called it. She thought I was just a placeholder, a straw man she could discard when the danger passed. But she didn't read the fine print. I did. I looked at the divorce papers again. Paragraph 4, Clause B stated clearly, all assets shall be divided according to legal title and ownership at the time of filing, according to legal title. A cold calm washed over me. It started at the base of my spine and spread through my veins, turning my blood to ice. The tears that had been threatening to fall evaporated. The shaking in my hands stopped. I reached into my purse. I did not use the cheap pen Genevieve provided. Instead, I pulled out my own Mont Blanc fountain pen, the one I bought for myself when I passed my certification exam. I uncapped the pen with a sharp click. You know what, Genevieve? I said, my voice steady and smooth as glass. You are absolutely right. Darius looked confused. He zoomed in on my face, expecting a breakdown. I am right, Genevieve asked, suspicious of my tone. Yes, I continued. I do not belong here. I have been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole for 5 years. I have been trying to teach fiscal responsibility to people who think money grows on trees. It is exhausting. And honestly, I am tired. I laid the papers flat on the linen tablecloth. I smoothed out the crease. This isn't a punishment, I said, looking directly into the camera lens of Darius's phone. This is a liberation. I signed my name, Nia Sterling. The ink was dark and permanent. I dated it. I even added the time. 8:42 p.m. Chad stopped drinking. Bianca's mouth fell open slightly. They had expected a fight. They had expected begging. They had expected me to cling to their ankles as they kicked me out. I capped my pen and put it back in my bag. I stood up, brushing a non-existent crumb from my lap. Thank you for the dinner, I said. And thank you for the gift. You have just saved me about $5,000 in legal retainers. I was planning to file next week anyway, but I didn't want to ruin the surprise. I picked up my clutch. Darius dropped his phone. It hit the table with a clatter. You were going to file, he asked, his voice cracking. Oh yes, Darius, I have been planning this for months, but having you serve me first really simplifies things. It proves abandonment. It proves hostile intent. It is perfect for the narrative. Where are you going? Genevieve demanded, standing up. We are not done here. You have to leave the keys. You have to give back the jewelry. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, loud and clear. The jewelry is fake, Genevieve. You bought it on sale at a department store outlet. Keep it. As for the keys, I will leave them on the counter when I move out, which will be tonight. I turned to walk away. Wait, Chad yelled, his face turning red. You cannot just walk out of here. You have company laptops. You have passwords. We need access to the accounts. I stopped and looked back at them one last time. My family, the people who had treated me like a servant for half a decade. You should have thought about that before you served the chief financial officer with divorce papers during the middle of a tax audit, I said. Chad's face went pale. What audit? He whispered. I smiled. The one I initiated this morning. Good luck with the IRS, Chad. I hear they are very thorough this time of year. I walked out of the private room and into the main dining area. I could hear them shouting behind me. I heard Genevieve screeching at Darius to do something. I heard Chad cursing. I walked through the restaurant, heads turning as I passed. I must have looked like a woman on a mission because the hostess stepped out of my way without a word. I pushed through the heavy double doors and into the humid Atlanta night. The valet saw me coming and ran for my car. As I waited, I pulled out my phone. I had one text message. It was from Bianca, sent 5 minutes ago, just before I signed the papers. It was a voice note. I played it, holding the phone to my ear. You think you are so smart? Nia Bianca's voice sneered through the speaker. But wait until you get home. Chad already called the locksmith. The codes are changed. Your stuff is going to be on the lawn by morning. Good luck finding a shelter that takes trash. I deleted the message. They thought locking me out of the house was a power move. They thought making me homeless would break me. But they had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just Nia the wife. I was Nia the signatory. I was the name on the deeds. I was the name on the bank accounts. The valet pulled up in my car. I tipped him $20. I got in and locked the doors. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of leather and freedom. I opened my banking app. My finger hovered over the transfer button. They wanted a war. They wanted to destroy me. They wanted to strip me of everything I had. I pressed the button. Processing transfer. The screen flashed green. Transfer complete. All corporate assets frozen pending audit. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going to the house. I was going to the Ritz-Carlton. And I was going to pay for the presidential suite with the company card one last time before the freeze took effect. Genevieve wanted her son to be single. She wanted her company back. Well, she got her son back. But the company, she had just signed that away along with her dignity. I drove into the night, leaving the Sterlings to their expensive dinner and their impending doom. The real party was just getting started. The lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead smelled like white tea and old money, a scent that usually made me feel out of place. But tonight it smelled like victory. I walked to the front desk, my heels clicking on the marble floors with a rhythm that felt like a countdown. The night manager looked up and smiled, recognizing the exhausted woman in the expensive dress who often booked rooms for visiting investors. I did not return the smile. I simply slid the sleek black American Express Centurion card across the mahogany counter. This was the company card, the one meant for client entertainment and executive emergencies. I figured my current situation qualified as both. I would like the presidential suite for the week, I said, my voice devoid of any tremor. And please charge the maximum incidental hold. I plan on ordering a lot of room service. The manager swiped the card. For a second, I held my breath, wondering if Genevieve had already managed to call the bank. But the machine chirped its approval. The freeze I had initiated on the operational accounts would take until midnight to fully propagate through the banking system. Until then, I had a window of opportunity, and I intended to use every second of it. I took the keycard and headed for the elevator, leaving the sounds of the lobby behind. As the doors slid shut, enclosing me in silence, the vibration in my clutch became impossible to ignore. My phone had been buzzing incessantly since I left the restaurant, a digital heartbeat of rage coming from the people I had just walked away from. I entered the suite, which was larger than the first apartment Darius and I had shared. I kicked off my heels, letting them land wherever they fell on the plush carpet. I poured myself a glass of water from the crystal pitcher on the sidebar and finally sat down on the edge of the massive king-sized bed. I pulled my phone out. The screen was a kaleidoscope of angry notifications. 43 missed calls, 12 voicemails, a stream of text messages that scrolled endlessly. I did not call them back. I did not text. Instead, I pressed play on the first voicemail. It was Bianca. "You think you are so tough, don't you?" Her voice screeched through the speaker, tinny and distorted with malice. Chad just tried to log into the bank account to pay the bill, and it was declined. "You embarrassed us in front of the whole restaurant. We are going home right now, and I'm going to personally throw every cheap suit you own onto the driveway. If it rains tonight, that is on you. Do not bother coming back, Nia. We changed the gate codes. I saved the message. Evidence of illegal eviction and destruction of property." The next voicemail was Darius. The background noise was chaotic wind rushing past the microphone, suggesting he was standing outside the restaurant, probably waiting for the valet, while his mother screamed in the background. "Nia, pick up the phone. Stop playing games. Mom is hyperventilating. You need to fix this. You need to call the bank and unfreeze the accounts right now. We can talk about the divorce terms. Maybe we were too harsh. Just come back and fix the accounts and we can discuss a settlement. Don't do this to me, Nia. I am your husband. I saved that one too. He wasn't worried about me. He wasn't worried about our marriage. He was worried about the money. He was worried that the ATM machine he had married was finally out of order. I set the phone down and walked over to the heavy oak desk by the window. The view of the Atlanta skyline was breathtaking, glittering with a million lights, but I only had eyes for my laptop. I opened it, and the screen illuminated my face in the darkened room. I plugged in my secure RSA token, the small device that generated the 6-digit codes necessary to access the financial heart of Sterling Properties. Genevieve thought she ran the company because her name was on the building. Chad thought he ran it because he had the title of Chief Financial Officer. But in the modern world, the person who runs the company is the person who has the admin passwords. I logged into the cloud-based accounting system. My fingers flew across the keyboard, executing a sequence of commands I had memorized years ago. I was logged in as the super admin, a profile I had created when I overhauled their archaic bookkeeping system. The dashboard loaded, showing the company's cash flow in real time. It was bleeding. Chad had been siphoning money out of the construction loans for months, moving it into shell accounts to cover his bad crypto investments. I could see it all. The transfers were sloppy, arrogant, hidden under vague line items like consulting fees and miscellaneous procurement. I navigated to the liquidity accounts. These were the funds meant for payroll, for taxes, for the operational costs of the business. I opened a new transfer window. According to the employment contract I had drafted for myself 3 years ago, a contract Darius had signed without reading because he was too busy watching football, I was entitled to a severance package equivalent to 3 years of salary, plus the immediate vesting of my equity in the event of a hostile termination without cause. Serving me divorce papers at a birthday dinner, publicly humiliating me and locking me out of my home, definitely qualified as hostile. I calculated the total. It was a substantial number, a number that would drain their liquid reserves to dangerously low levels. I authorized the transfer, moving the funds from the Sterling operating account into a secure escrow holding account under my name. It was legal, it was contractual, and it was devastating. The screen flashed a confirmation. Transaction approved. I wasn't done. I opened my email client. In my drafts folder sat an email I had written weeks ago. It was addressed to the Internal Revenue Service, specifically the Criminal Investigation Division. The subject line read, Supplemental Report FY 2023. Potential Irregularities in Sterling Properties, LLC. I attached the files, the PDF documents showing Chad's embezzlement, the scanned copies of Genevieve's personal expenses charged to the business accounts, including the renovation of her vacation home, and the lease on Darius's Range Rover. The falsified contractor invoices Bianca had submitted for work that was never done. I hovered my mouse over the send button. For 5 years I had protected them. I had corrected their mistakes, filed amended returns to keep them out of jail, and begged them to follow the law. I had been the shield standing between their greed and the consequences of their actions. And they had called me a bad investment. They had called me boring. They had tried to discard me like a used napkin. I thought about Darius recording me with his phone, waiting for my tears. I thought about Genevieve's smug smile. I clicked send. The email vanished from my outbox, whizzing through the digital ether straight to the federal government. It was done. The shield was gone. Now I was the sword. I closed the laptop and sat back in the leather chair. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. My phone was still buzzing on the bed, vibrating against the duvet. They were probably at the gate now, realizing the codes really didn't work, realizing the accounts were empty, realizing that the woman they thought was nothing had just become everything. I stood up and walked to the minibar. I took out a small bottle of champagne, popped the cork, and poured it into a glass. I walked to the window and toasted the city lights. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered. I took a sip. It tasted crisp and cold. Below me, the city of Atlanta slept, unaware that one of its most prominent families had just been erased from the ledger. I turned off my phone, tossing it onto the pile of pillows. Tonight I would sleep. Tomorrow the real audit would begin. While I settled into the silence of the hotel suite across town, the Sterling mansion was loud with the noise of premature celebration. I know this because I had installed the smart home security system myself 2 years ago, and naturally I was the only one who knew the administrative override codes. I opened my laptop and pulled up the live feed from the living room camera. The audio was crisp, the video definition strictly 4K. It was like watching a reality show where the contestants did not know they had already been eliminated. Darius and Chad were in the main salon, sprawled out on the Italian leather sofas that I had picked out. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the clinking of crystal. They had raided the wine cellar, opening bottles of vintage Bordeaux that Genevieve had been saving for a wedding anniversary she would likely never see. Darius held his glass up to the light, swirling the dark red liquid with a look of sloppy intoxication. I have never felt so light, he slurred, his tie undone and hanging loose around his neck. I mean, I loved her, in the beginning, but she was just so heavy. Always talking about responsibility, always watching every dime I spent. It is like I can finally breathe again. Chad laughed, kicking his feet up onto the coffee table, something I never allowed him to do. He took a long drag from his cigar and blew the smoke toward the ceiling. "You dodged a bullet, man," he said, his voice thick with arrogance. That girl was a drag. She never understood how people like us operate. She thought she was the boss just because she knew how to use Excel. You need a wife who knows her place, Darius. Someone who appreciates the sterling name, not someone who thinks she is better than it. Bianca walked into the frame, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres she had likely ordered from the country club since she did not know how to turn on the oven. She looked flushed and triumphant. "Mom is in the study calling all her friends," she chirped, setting the tray down. "She is telling everyone that you finally came to your senses and dumped the help. She is already planning a welcome back to the bachelor life party for next weekend." Darius grilled. "A party? That sounds amazing. We need more drinks, though. This wine is too dry. I want champagne, the expensive stuff, the gold bottle." He fumbled for his phone, tapping the screen with clumsy fingers. "I am ordering 3 cases from the cellar delivery service. Tonight we drink like kings." I watched on my screen as he navigated the app. I saw his thumb hover over the purchase button. He pressed it. A second passed, then another. Darius frowned. He tapped the screen again, harder this time. "What the hell? What is it?" Chad asked lazily. "It says payment declined," Darius muttered. "That is impossible. It is the corporate Amex. The limit is $50,000 a month." Chad snorted, sitting up. "You probably maxed it out on that watch you bought last week. Or maybe your ex-wife reported it stolen just to be petty. Typical Nia behavior. Here, move over. Let a real CFO handle this." Chad pulled out his wallet. He produced his own card, a heavy metal card issued to him as the chief financial officer. He held it up, catching the light. "This is the Platinum Business Card, Darius. Unlimited spending power. Watch and learn." Chad took Darius's phone and entered his card details. He hit the button with a flourish. The silence that followed was delicious. Chad stared at the phone. His smirk vanished, replaced by a look of genuine confusion. "It says declined. Contact issuer immediately." "What?" Bianca asked, her voice rising in pitch. "How can both cards be declined?" "We paid the bill last week. I saw the statement." "There is a glitch in the app," Chad declared, standing up and pacing. "It has to be the vendor's system. Or maybe the bank's fraud detection algorithm is too sensitive. I am going to call the concierge line. They will clear this up in 2 seconds." I watched Chad dial the number. I put on my headphones to hear the other end of the call, clearly through the high-fidelity audio pickup. "This is Chad Miller, CFO of Sterling Properties." Chad barked into the phone, his voice dripping with entitlement. "My card was just declined for a routine purchase. I want the hold lifted immediately, and I want an apology for the embarrassment." There was a pause. Then the voice of the automated operator was replaced by a human being. But it wasn't the usual sycophantic concierge. The voice was cold, professional, and detached. "Mr. Miller, for security purposes, I need you to verify your social security number and the tax ID of the business." Chad rattled off the numbers impatiently. "Look, I do not have time for 20 questions. Just turn the card back on." "Mr. Miller," the voice on the line said, and even through the speakers I could hear the finality in it. I cannot reactivate this card. The account has been flagged. Flagged for what Chad demanded. I authorized the charge. It has been flagged for liquidation and audit, the representative said. All credit lines associated with Sterling Properties LLC have been suspended effective immediately. All assets are currently frozen pending a forensic review. Audit, Chad whispered, the color draining from his face. He looked at Darius, who was still holding his empty wine glass. Who authorized an audit? Chad screamed into the phone. We did not authorize anything. The authorization came from the primary account holder and majority shareholder, the representative replied. Good night, Mr. Miller. The line went dead. Chad lowered the phone slowly. He looked like he had seen a ghost. What is going on? Darius asked, sobering up instantly. What did they say? They say the accounts are frozen, Chad said, his voice shaking. They say the majority shareholder ordered a forensic audit. Genevieve chose that moment to sweep into the room. She was beaming, holding a glass of sherry. I just got off the phone with the senator's wife, she announced. She is thrilled you are single again, Darius. She has a niece who just finished finishing school in Switzerland. Much more appropriate stock than Nia. Mom, Darius said, standing up, his legs unsteady. The credit cards are not working. The bank says the accounts are frozen. Genevieve stopped. Her smile evaporated. Don't be ridiculous. I used the card an hour ago to pay the caterer. They are frozen, Mom, Chad said, panic rising in his throat. They said the majority shareholder ordered it. Genevieve let out a sharp laugh. That is impossible. I am the majority shareholder. I own this company. My father built it and I run it. This is just some computer error. She marched over to the antique desk in the corner where the landline sat. It was a dedicated line to their private wealth manager, a man named Arthur, who had managed the Sterling money for 20 years. She snatched up the receiver and dialed. She hit the speaker button so everyone could hear Arthur apologize. Arthur, this is Genevieve. Genevieve snapped. There seems to be some incompetence with your credit department. My son and son-in-law are trying to make a purchase, and they are being told the accounts are frozen. Fix it, now. There was a long silence on the line. Then Arthur spoke. His voice sounded tired and strangely distant. Hello, Genevieve. I cannot fix it. The order came from the compliance department, and frankly, my hands are tied. What do you mean your hands are tied? Genevieve shrieked. I am your biggest client. I sign your paychecks. Unfreeze my money, Arthur, or I will have your job. You are not my biggest client, Genevieve, Arthur said quietly. Not anymore. And you do not sign the checks. You haven't signed a check that cleared in 3 years. What are you talking about? Genevieve demanded, gripping the edge of the desk. You need to check your corporate charter, Genevieve, Arthur said. Do you remember, 3 years ago? The tax incentives, the minority business enterprise grant you wanted so badly. The one that required 51% ownership by a minority woman. I leaned closer to my laptop screen, watching the blood drain from Genevieve's face. I remembered that day vividly. She had been desperate. The company was drowning in debt Chad had racked up. The government contract was the only lifeline. She had come to me begging me to sign the papers. It was just a formality, she had said then. Just a piece of paper to show the government. We will draft a side letter that gives me the power back. But she never drafted the side letter. She was too lazy, too arrogant. She thought I was too stupid to understand what I was signing. She thought I was just a loyal dog who would never bite the hand that fed it, even if that hand was beating me. I know what I signed, Genevieve sputtered. It was a nominee agreement. Naya is just a placeholder. She holds the shares in trust for me. No, Arthur said, and I could almost hear him shaking his head. I reviewed the documents this evening, Genevieve. The transfer was absolute. It had to be absolute to qualify for the federal grant. You transferred 51% of Sterling Properties to Nia Sterling. Unconditionally, irrevocably. Legally, she owns the company. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the heavy breathing of 4 people realizing their lives were over. Genevieve slumped into the desk chair. But She is my daughter-in-law. She wouldn't. She signed divorce papers tonight. She is gone. Yes, Arthur said. And before she left, she exercised her right as the majority shareholder to freeze all assets pending a full investigation into financial irregularities. She flagged transactions going back 5 years, Genevieve. She flagged the renovation on your lake house. She flagged Chad's crypto withdrawals. She flagged everything. The word audit hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Arthur. Arthur, you have to help us, Genevieve whispered, her voice trembling. If they look at the books, if the IRS sees the books, I cannot help you. Arthur said, his voice cold. I have already received a subpoena, Genevieve. I have to turn over the files. Do not call me again. My lawyer has advised me to sever all contact. The line clicked and went dead. The busy signal echoed through the opulent room, a harsh rhythmic tone that sounded like a countdown. Chad dropped onto the sofa, his head in his hands. We are going to jail, he moaned. She knows about the shell companies. She knows about the offshore accounts. She is an accountant, for God's sake. She knows where all the bodies are buried. Darius looked at his mother. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't give her the company. Genevieve stared at the phone receiver in her hand as if it had turned into a snake. I thought she was stupid, she whispered. I thought she was just happy to be here. I thought she would do whatever I told her. Bianca started crying. What about my allowance, she wailed. What about my lease? How am I going to pay for my trainer? Genevieve stood up slowly. Her face was gray. She looked old suddenly. The vitality and arrogance that usually sustained her had vanished, leaving behind a frightened elderly woman. We need a lawyer, she said, her voice cracking. We need the best lawyer in Atlanta. We will sue her. We will say she tricked me. We will say she embezzled the shares. With what money, Mom? Chad asked, looking up, his eyes red and wild. We have no money. The accounts are frozen. We cannot even pay a retainer. We cannot even buy gas for the cars. Genevieve looked around the room, her eyes darting frantically from the expensive furniture to the art on the walls. We have assets, she said, desperate. We have this house. We have the jewelry. The house is owned by the company, Chad said dully. Nia owns the company. Nia owns the house. Genevieve let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She grabbed a crystal vase from the desk and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the fireplace, sending shards of glass flying everywhere. She did this on purpose, Genevieve screamed. She planned this. She sat there at dinner and smiled and thanked me, and all the while she had her finger on the trigger. I closed my laptop. I had seen enough. They were beginning to understand the scope of their destruction. They were realizing that the woman they had mocked, the woman they had treated as a servant, the woman they had gifted divorce papers to, was actually their executioner. I poured the last of the champagne into my glass. The show was over for tonight. Tomorrow the real work would begin. Tomorrow I would meet with the FBI. But for now I slept the sleep of the just, knowing that in the mansion across town nobody was sleeping at all. The ringtone cut through the silence of the presidential suite like a fire alarm. It was 2 a.m. I was standing on the balcony wrapped in a plush white robe, watching the traffic on Peachtree Road far below. The bottle of champagne was half empty, and for the first time in 5 years, my shoulders were not hunched with tension. I looked at the phone screen. It was Darius. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. I wanted him to sit in that silence. I wanted him to feel the distance between us, a distance that was no longer measured in miles, but in power. Finally, I swiped the screen and put the phone on speaker, setting it down on the glass table beside my champagne flute. Hello, Darius, I said. My voice was calm, almost bored. It was the voice I used for IRS auditors and difficult vendors. Nia. His voice was a wet, frantic mess. He was drunk. I could hear it in the slurring of his consonants, the heavy, jagged breathing. Nia, baby, you have to stop this. It is not funny anymore. Mom is losing her mind. She is throwing things. She broke the antique vase in the hallway. You have to fix it. Call the bank. Tell them it was a mistake. I took a slow sip of champagne. The bubbles fizzed on my tongue, sharp and cold. There is no mistake, Darius, I said. The bank is simply following protocol. When a majority shareholder suspects embezzlement and fraud, it is their fiduciary duty to freeze assets. You know this. You went to business school, or at least you paid for the degree. Don't give me that corporate speak, he shouted, and I heard the phone fumble, likely switching hands. You are not the majority shareholder. You are the accountant. You are the help, Nia. You signed a piece of paper 3 years ago to help Mom get a government contract. That is it. It was a technicality. I laughed. It was a low, dry sound. A technicality, I repeated. Is that what they told you? Is that what Genevieve told herself so she could sleep at night while treating me like garbage? I leaned closer to the phone, my voice dropping to a whisper that was far more dangerous than a scream. Let me refresh your memory, Darius, because you seem to have convenient amnesia. Let us go back 3 years. Do you remember where we were? We were in the library of the mansion. Chad was crying on the sofa because he had just lost $2 million of the company's liquidity on a crypto scam he saw on Twitter. I heard Darius's breath hitch. He remembered. Of course he remembered. It was the only time I had ever seen Chad look human because he was terrified of going to prison. The company was insolvent. Darius. I continued relentless. You were weeks away from bankruptcy. The payroll checks were going to bounce. The construction loans were being called in. Genevieve was hysterical. She was facing the end of the Sterling legacy. She was facing humiliation. And who did she turn to? Did she turn to her brilliant son? Did she turn to her genius son-in-law? No. She turned to me. Darius whimpered. Nia, please. She begged me, Darius. She got on her knees on that Persian rug. I can still see the stains on her knees. She begged me to save them. She needed a minority woman to head the company to qualify for the emergency relief grant and the new city contracts. She needed a face that looked like mine to clean up the mess that looked like Chad. So she transferred the stock, I said, letting the words hang in the humid night air. 51%. Controlling interest. It was a nominee agreement. Darius shouted, his voice cracking. It was supposed to be temporary. You were supposed to give it back when the audit period was over. Supposed to, I mocked. That is the funny thing about legal documents, Darius. Intentions do not matter. Signatures matter. Words matter. Genevieve was too cheap to hire an external lawyer to draft a complex trust agreement. She did not want anyone to know how close to the edge she was. So she downloaded a standard transfer of ownership form from the internet. She thought she was smart. She thought I was stupid. She thought because I loved you, I would just hand it back whenever she snapped her fingers. But she messed up, Darius. She signed a full, irrevocable transfer of assets. There is no side letter. There is no sunset clause. There is no trust agreement. There is just a deed of transfer filed with the Secretary of State transferring 51% of Sterling Properties, LLC, to Nia Sterling. The silence on the other end was heavy, suffocating. I tried to tell her, I said, my voice softening just a fraction, not out of pity, but out of marvel at the sheer irony of it all. I tried to warn her. I told her the language was too broad. I told her she was giving away the kingdom. Do you know what she said to me? Darius did not answer. She told me to shut up and sign, I said. She told me I was lucky to even have my name on a Sterling document. She said I should be grateful for the trust she was showing me. So I signed. I saved your company. I secured the grant. I fixed Chad's books. And I waited. Waited for what Darius whispered. Waited for you to treat me like a wife, I said. Waited for Genevieve to treat me like a partner. Waited for a single thank you. But it never came. Instead, I got insults. I got excluded from family photos. I got mocked for my background. And tonight I got divorce papers. Speaking of which, I said, shifting gears, my tone brightening with lethal cheer. I have to thank you for those papers, Darius, really. They were the final piece of the puzzle. What are you talking about? He asked. He sounded exhausted, defeated. Go find the papers, Darius. I left them on the table. Go look at the asset division section. Genevieve bragged about how ironclad they were. I heard footsteps. I heard him fumbling with paper. I heard Genevieve screaming in the background, asking who he was talking to. Paragraph 4, Section C. I directed him. Read it out loud. I waited. I took another sip of champagne. All marital assets. Darius read, his voice trembling. All marital assets and business interests shall be divided strictly according to the legal title and ownership records on file with the state at the time of filing. He trailed off. The silence was absolute. Do you understand what that means, Darius? I asked. It means... He choked. It means your mother wrote a prenup and a divorce settlement that protects the legal owner of the assets, I explained. She wrote it to protect herself from me because she thought she owned everything. She thought I was just a gold digger who would try to claim her money. So she put in a clause that says, we only get what is legally in our names. But she forgot who legally owns the company, I said. She handed me a document that says I keep what is mine, and 51% of Sterling Properties is mine, Darius. Legally, irrevocably. And thanks to the divorce papers she drafted, I do not even have to split it with you. It is not marital property. It is my separate property acquired via business transfer and confirmed by your own legal filing. You cannot do this, Darius screamed. It is our family legacy. My grandfather built this. Your grandfather built it, I agreed. Your mother broke it. Chad looted it. And I saved it. And now I own it. I stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony, looking down at the city. You wanted me gone, Darius. You wanted your freedom. You wanted to go back to being a bachelor without a boring wife nagging you about budgets. Well, congratulations. You are free. You are single. And you are broke. Naya, wait, he pleaded. We can fix this. I will fire Chad. I will put Mom in a home. I will do whatever you want. Just come back. I love you. I closed my eyes. That was the saddest part. He probably believed he meant it. But his love was like his business sense, cheap, performative, and ultimately worthless. You do not love me, Darius, I said. You love the lifestyle I maintained for you. You love the safety net I provided. But the net is gone. You are in free fall. I am going to hang up now, I said. No, 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 do not hang up, Darius shouted. What are we supposed to do? The cards do not work. We have no cash. I suggest you ask Genevieve, I said. She seems to think she is the smartest person in the room. Maybe she can manifest some money. Or maybe Chad has some crypto left in that secret wallet he thinks I do not know about. Chad has a secret wallet. Darius asked, his voice changing from fear to anger. Oh yes, I said. About $200,000. He skimmed it from the renovation budget for the Buckhead condo project. You might want to ask him about that before the FBI gets there. FBI, Darius whispered. I looked at my watch. It was 2:15 in the morning. I sent the email at midnight, Darius. Whistleblower protection. I admitted to my part in signing the falsified tax returns Genevieve forced me to prepare, and I handed over all the evidence of Chad's embezzlement and Genevieve's tax evasion. I cut a deal. Immunity for testimony. You went to the feds, he breathed. You sent your own family to prison. Ex-family, I corrected. And I didn't send them to prison. Their greed did. I just turned on the lights. Goodbye, Darius. I ended the call. I did not block the number. I wanted to see the notifications. I wanted to see the panic unfold in real-time text messages. I walked back into the bedroom and sat on the bed. The room was quiet. The air conditioner hummed a low, steady note. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was relief. For 3 years I had carried their secrets. I had carried their lies. I had carried the weight of their incompetence on my back while they whipped me for not moving fast enough. I lay back on the pillows. The ceiling was high and painted a soft cream. It looked like a blank slate. Tomorrow the forensic audit would officially begin. Tomorrow the marshals would likely arrive at the mansion to secure the assets. Tomorrow my name would be in the papers, not as the discarded wife, but as the woman who brought down a corrupt empire. But for now, I was just Nia. And for the first time in a decade, I owed nothing to anyone. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I slept without dreaming of drowning. The conference room on the 45th floor of Henderson and Associates smelled of mahogany polish and intimidation. It was designed to make people feel small. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Atlanta, a city that Genevieve Sterling believed she owned, but from up here, the cars looked like toys, and the people were invisible. I walked in precisely at 9 in the morning. I was wearing a tailored crimson suit that I had bought with my own money 5 years ago. Red is a power color. It is the color of warning signs. It is the color of blood in the water. Genevieve sat at the head of the massive oval table. She had clearly spent the morning trying to repair the damage to her appearance, but the stress lines around her mouth were deep. Darius sat to her right, looking like a man waiting for a sentencing hearing. Bianca was scrolling nervously on her phone, probably checking if her credit cards had been reactivated yet. And then there was Chad. Chad sat with his legs crossed, ankle over knee, displaying his Italian loafers. He looked remarkably confident for a man who had just learned his company was insolvent. But that was Chad. He possessed the unearned confidence of a mediocre white man who had failed upward his entire life. He saw me enter and offered a tight, pitying smile. Mr. Henderson, the senior partner of the firm, stood up. He was a man who cost $800 an hour. He had silver hair, a tan that came from a bottle, and a reputation for burying his clients' enemies under mountains of paperwork. Mrs. Sterling, please have a seat, Henderson said, gesturing to the lone chair on the opposite side of the table. My clients have retained me to address the severe breach of trust and potential criminal misappropriation of assets regarding Sterling Properties. I sat down. I placed my leather portfolio on the table. I did not open it. I folded my hands and looked at Henderson. I am listening, I said. Henderson cleared his throat. He opened a thick file. We are aware of the document signed 3 years ago transferring shares to your name. However, we are prepared to argue that this transfer was made under duress, and with the understanding of it being a nominal arrangement for regulatory purposes. By freezing the corporate accounts and transferring liquidity to an escrow account, you have committed what we believe to be a breach of fiduciary duty and theft. Genevieve nodded vigorously. She stole my company, she hissed. She tricked me. Henderson held up a hand to silence her. We are prepared to file an injunction immediately, he continued. We will also be filing a civil suit for conversion of funds. However, Mrs. Sterling is willing to offer you a way out. If you return the funds immediately, resign your position, and sign over the shares, we will agree not to press charges for embezzlement. We will even allow you to keep the severance package outlined in your original employment contract, minus legal fees, of course. I looked at them. They really thought this was going to work. They thought they could bully me with big words and expensive suits. Before I could respond, Chad leaned forward. He couldn't help himself. He needed to be the smartest person in the room. Let me break this down for you, Nia, Chad said, his voice dripping with condescension. I know you are good with a calculator and you know how to balance a checkbook, but corporate law and high finance are a different animal. You are out of your depth here. He stood up and walked over to the whiteboard as if he were about to teach a class. You see, Nia, what you did is called piercing the corporate veil. He lectured using the term completely incorrectly. You commingled assets. When you move that money, you basically admitted that you do not know how to run a sophisticated enterprise. These accounts are part of a complex leverage structure. By freezing them, you have triggered liquidity covenants with our lenders. You are going to bankrupt the very thing you are trying to steal. He chuckled, shaking his head. Look, I get it. You saw a lot of zeros and you got excited. It is a lot of money for someone like you. But wealth management requires a certain pedigree. It requires understanding the nuance of business relationships. You cannot just lock the doors and keep the money. That is not how the real world works. I watched him speak. I watched the way he gestured with his hands, the way he looked at Darius for approval, the way he smirked at me. He was enjoying this. He thought he was explaining nuclear physics to a toddler. So here is the deal, Chad said, leaning his hands on the table and looming over me. You sign the papers, you give back the keys, and maybe I will put in a good word for you. Maybe we will not ruin your credit score so badly you cannot rent an apartment. You walk away, Nia. Go back to doing taxes for small businesses. Leave the empire building to the men who know what they are doing. He sat back down, looking satisfied. Genevieve looked triumphant. Darius just looked at the floor. I waited a beat. I let the silence stretch until Henderson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Are you finished, Chad? I asked quietly. Chad rolled his eyes. Yeah, I am finished. Sign the papers. I reached for my portfolio. I unzipped it slowly. The sound of the zipper was loud in the quiet room. I pulled out a single stack of documents paper-clipped together. I did not look at Chad. I looked at Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson? I said, my voice professional and cold. I assume as an officer of the court, you have a duty to report any knowledge of ongoing felonies committed by your clients, specifically money laundering and wire fraud. Henderson frowned. Excuse me. I slid the stack of papers across the polished table. It stopped right in front of him. You mentioned high finance, Chad, I said, turning to my brother-in-law. Let us talk about the West Side Revitalization Project. Chad froze. His face, which had been flushed with arrogance, suddenly drained of all color. That was a $20 million government grant earmarked for affordable housing. I continued speaking to the room, but keeping my eyes on Chad. It was a project designed to build apartments for low-income families in the district I grew up in. It was the flagship project for Sterling Properties last year. I looked at Genevieve. You remember that project, don't you, Genevieve? You cut the ribbon. You gave a speech about giving back to the community. You cried on the local news. Genevieve looked confused. Yes, it was a beautiful ceremony. What does this have to do with you stealing my company? I pointed to the documents in front of Henderson. Mr. Henderson, if you look at page 3, you will see a series of wire transfers authorized by your client Chad Miller acting as CFO. These transfers, totaling $2.3 million, were sent to a consulting firm called Zenith Solutions, based in the Cayman Islands. That is a legitimate vendor, Chad shouted, jumping up. They provided architectural consulting. Sit down, Chad, I snapped. My voice cracked like a whip. He sat. Zenith Solutions, I continued, does not have any architects. In fact, according to the incorporation papers I pulled from the Cayman Registry, Zenith Solutions has exactly one employee. A woman named Svetlana, who incidentally shares an address with an online crypto gambling exchange. Darius looked up. His eyes were wide. Crypto, he whispered. I turned the page for Henderson. Here are the bank records, I said. I traced the money flow. The $2 million went from the affordable housing grant into Zenith Solutions, and from there it was transferred into a personal crypto wallet. And do you know what that wallet was used for? I looked at Bianca. It wasn't used for architecture, Bianca. It wasn't used for business. I pulled out a glossy photograph and slid it across the table. It showed a bright yellow Lamborghini Urus. He bought a car, I said. He bought a $300,000 SUV. And he leased a penthouse apartment in Midtown for a 22-year-old Instagram model named Kiki. Bianca let out a strangled sound. She grabbed the photo. Her hands were shaking. Chad, she screamed. You told me that car was a company lease. You told me you were working late at the office. It is a lie. Chad yelled, his voice high and panicked. She forged these. She is trying to frame me. Mr. Henderson, look at the metadata, I said calmly. Look at the IP addresses. Look at the authorization signatures. They are all Chad. He embezzled $2 million from a federal housing grant. That is not just theft, Mr. Henderson, that is wire fraud, that is money laundering. And because it was federal money, that is a direct ticket to federal prison, mandatory minimum sentencing. I leaned forward, looking at Chad, who was now sweating profusely. You mansplained finance to me, Chad. You told me I didn't understand the nuance of business. But I think you are the one who is confused. You see, forensic accounting is all about nuance. It is about finding the little threads that people like you leave behind, because you are too arrogant to think anyone is watching. I watched. I watched every penny. I turned back to Henderson, who was reading the documents with a look of growing horror. "Mr. Henderson," I said, "I have already prepared a digital packet containing all of this evidence: the embezzlement, the false invoices, the tax evasion schemes Genevieve signed off on to cover the losses." Genevieve gasped. "I didn't know. Chad told me it was creative accounting." "Ignorance is not a defense when you sign the returns, Genevieve," I said. "You signed them. I warned you not to. I told you the deductions were illegal, but you told me to do as I was told, so I did. I prepared them, and I kept copies of my memos warning you that it was fraud." I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. "Mr. Henderson," I said, "you asked me to sign over the shares. You threatened me with a lawsuit. But here is the reality. I am the majority shareholder of a company that is currently a crime scene. The only reason I haven't gone to the FBI yet is because I wanted to see if you were smart enough to save yourself." "Save myself?" Henderson asked, his voice tight. "Yes," I said, "because right now you are representing a criminal enterprise. If you continue to advocate for them, if you try to intimidate a whistleblower, which is what I am, you become part of the conspiracy. You could lose your license. You could go to jail with them." The room was dead silent. Even Bianca had stopped sobbing. They were all looking at the lawyer, the shark they had hired to eat me. Henderson closed the file. He stood up. He picked up his briefcase. "Mr. Henderson," Genevieve cried, "do something. Arrest her." Henderson looked at Genevieve with a look of pure disgust. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, "I am terminating my representation of you and your family effective immediately. I will be sending a formal letter disengaging our firm from all Sterling entities. Do not contact me again." "But what about the lawsuit?" Chad stammered. "What about the injunction?" "There will be no lawsuit," Henderson said, "because if I were you, Mr. Miller, I would save every penny I had for a criminal defense attorney. You are going to need one who specializes in federal indictments." He looked at me. He nodded once, a gesture of respect from one shark to another. "Ms. Sterling," he said, "good luck." He walked out of the room. The heavy door clicked shut behind him. I was alone with them. The silence was heavy, thick with fear. Chad was slumped in his chair, looking at the table. Bianca was staring at the photo of the Lamborghini. Darius was looking at me with a mixture of awe and terror. And Genevieve, the matriarch, the queen. She was trembling. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "You wouldn't send us to prison. We are family." I picked up my portfolio. I zipped it shut. "Family," I repeated, tasting the word. "Family doesn't give you divorce papers for your birthday, Genevieve. Family doesn't mock your background. Family doesn't steal from the poor to buy sports cars for their mistresses." I walked to the door. "I have a meeting," I said. I checked my watch. "In 1 hour." "With who?" Darius asked, his voice barely a croak. "With the FBI." I lied. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe it was a promise. I hadn't called them yet. But the phone was in my hand. "You have 1 hour," I said. 1 hour to decide if you want to do this the hard way or the fatal way. I walked out. I didn't look back. I heard Chad start to cry. It was a pathetic sound, but to me it sounded like music. Back in the hotel suite, I refilled my glass with the last of the champagne and maximized the window on my laptop screen. The camera feed from the Sterling Mansion living room was crystal clear. It was like watching a silent film of a shipwreck. They had just returned from the lawyer's office. The drive must have been excruciating. I imagined the silence in that expensive SUV, the kind of silence that is heavy enough to crush your lungs. They walked into the living room, and for a moment nobody moved. They just stood there in their expensive clothes, looking at the wreckage of their lives. The room was beautiful, filled with art and custom furniture, but the energy was toxic. It was a mausoleum of greed. Genevieve was the first to move. She walked over to the sideboard and poured herself a drink, her hand shaking so badly the crystal decanter rattled against the glass. She downed it in one gulp. Then she turned slowly to look at Chad. Chad was trying to make himself small on the sofa. He had lost all his swagger. The arrogance that usually radiated off him like heat waves was gone, replaced by the clammy sweat of a man who knows he is cornered. "You stole from me," Genevieve said. Her voice was low, barely a whisper, but the high-fidelity audio picked it up perfectly. "You stole $2 million from the affordable housing grant." Chad looked up, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. "Genevieve, it was an investment," he stammered. "I was going to pay it back. I just needed liquidity to leverage a position in the market. It was a sure thing. I was doing it for the family." "For the family," Genevieve repeated. She walked toward him. Her steps were slow, deliberate. "You bought a Lamborghini, Chad. You rented an apartment for a girl younger than my daughter. Was that for the family too?" "It was a temporary allocation of funds," Chad insisted, standing up, trying to regain some height, some authority. "Look, Nia is twisting the narrative. She is manipulating the data. We can fix this. I just need access to the offshore accounts. If you give me the codes, I can move some assets around and cover the hole before the audit goes deep." Genevieve stopped right in front of him. She looked up at him. She was a foot shorter than him, but in that moment she looked 10 feet tall. "There are no offshore accounts, you idiot," she screamed. Nia froze them all. "There is nothing to move. You spent the money. You spent the grant money. Do you know what that means? It means when the feds come, they are not just coming for the company. They are coming for me. They are going to think I authorized it." She raised her hand and slapped him. It wasn't a theatrical slap. It was a heavy, violent blow that echoed through the speakers. Chad stumbled back, holding his cheek. His eyes went wide with shock. Mom Bianca shrieked, rushing to her husband's side. She grabbed Chad's arm, glaring at her mother. "Stop it! You cannot hit him! He is stressed! He made a mistake!" "A mistake?" Genevieve laughed, a sound that was devoid of any humor. "A mistake is forgetting to file a receipt, Bianca. Embezzling $2 million is a felony. He has ruined us. He has handed Nia the gun and loaded it for her. It is not his fault," Bianca yelled, her face twisting into an ugly mask of entitlement. "It is Darius's fault." She spun around and pointed a manicured finger at her brother, who was standing by the fireplace, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. "This is on you, Darius," she screamed. "You are the one who married her. You are the one who brought that snake into our house. You were supposed to handle her." "Me?" Darius asked, his voice weak. "How is this my fault? Chad is the one who stole the money." "Because you are weak," Bianca spat. "You let her take over. You let her get into the books. You were supposed to be the man of the house, Darius. You were supposed to keep her in check. But you were too busy playing golf and letting her run everything. If you had been a real husband, she would not have had the power to do this. You let a girl from the gutter take down our legacy because you were too lazy to read the contracts you signed." I watched Darius recoil as if he had been slapped too. It was the truth, and it hurt. He looked at his mother, expecting her to defend him, expecting her to tell Bianca to stop. But Genevieve just stared at him, her eyes cold and hard. She agreed. In her mind, this was Darius's failure. He had failed to control his asset. "I am going to fix this," Darius muttered. He pulled out his phone. "I am going to talk to her. She loves me. I know she does. She is just hurt. I can talk her down." He turned and walked out of the living room, heading for the terrace. He needed privacy. He needed to work his charm. I watched him leave the frame on my laptop screen. A second later, my phone lit up on the bed beside me. Incoming call, Darius Sterling. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to feel the desperation clawing at his throat. A minute later, my phone chimed with a text message. "Nia, please pick up. I am so sorry. I know I messed up today. Mom pressured me into the divorce papers. I didn't want to do it. I love you. We can work this out. I will go to therapy. I will do whatever you want. Just please stop the audit. Please come home." I read the words and felt a wave of nausea. It was so predictable. The gaslighting, the shifting of blame, the empty promises. He was rewriting history, trying to paint himself as the victim of his mother's ambition rather than a willing participant in my humiliation. He thought he could charm me one last time. He thought I was the same woman who had forgiven him for forgetting our anniversary, for spending our savings on a boat we didn't need, for leaving me alone at parties while he networked with socialites. But that woman was gone. She had died the moment she signed those papers. I picked up my phone. I didn't type a reply. Words were useless with men like Darius. He would just twist them. He needed something he couldn't argue with, something undeniable. I opened my encrypted folder. I scrolled past the financial documents, past the tax returns, past the evidence of fraud. I found the folder labeled Miami. I selected a single photo. It was taken a month ago outside the W Hotel in South Beach. The resolution was high enough to see the sweat on his forehead. Darius was standing by the valet stand. He was not alone. His arms were wrapped around a woman. She was 22 years old. She was his executive assistant, the one he had sworn was just a kid fresh out of college who needed mentoring. In the photo, his hand was resting low on her hip, pulling her into him. Her head was thrown back, laughing. They looked like a couple in love. They looked like two people who didn't have a care in the world. I had hired a private investigator to take that photo the moment I saw the charge for the flight on the company card. I had saved it, waiting for the right moment, waiting for him to lie to me about his loyalty. I attached the photo to the text thread. Then I typed a simple message. Don't perform for me, Darius. I am not your mother. I do not buy your act. And by the way, you might want to tell your assistant that her employment is terminated effective immediately. As the majority shareholder, I am cutting unnecessary overhead. I hit send. I looked back at the laptop screen. Darius was standing on the terrace illuminated by the outdoor security lights. He was looking down at his phone. I saw his body go rigid. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he slumped against the railing. He dropped the phone onto the patio table. He put his hands over his face and slid down until he was crouching on the ground. He wasn't crying because he lost me. He was crying because he had been caught. He was crying because he realized that I had been watching him the whole time. My phone buzzed again. It was another text from him. How long have you known? I typed back immediately. Since the day you booked the flight. I installed a keylogger on your laptop last year, Darius. I have seen every email. I have seen every chat message. I have seen the jewelry you bought her with the bonus I earned for you. I know everything. I watched him read it. He stood up and looked around wildly, as if he expected me to be hiding in the bushes. He looked up at the security camera mounted in the corner of the patio. He stared right into the lens. I waved at the screen even though he couldn't see me. Goodbye, Darius, I typed. Enjoy the bachelor life. I hear it is expensive. He stormed back into the house. I switched the camera feed back to the living room. He walked in looking like a man who had just seen his own execution. She knows, he whispered. His voice was hollow. She knows about Ashley. Who is Ashley? Genevieve asked, snapping her head up. My assistant Daria said, sinking onto the ottoman. Nia has photos. She has been tracking my computer. She knows everything, Mom. She isn't coming back. Genevieve closed her eyes. She looked exhausted. Of course she knows, she murmured. She is the one who pays the bills. She probably saw the charges before you even made them. You are a fool, Darius. You are a sloppy, careless fool. And just like that, the alliance broke. They turned on each other. The room erupted into shouting. Bianca was screaming about how Darius had ruined her life. Chad was yelling that Darius's affair was the reason Nia was vindictive, ignoring his own theft. Genevieve was shouting at all of them, lamenting that she was surrounded by idiots. I turned the volume down. I didn't need to hear the words anymore. The visual was enough. It was the collapse of a dynasty in real time. I closed the laptop. I had one more call to make, one more piece of the trap to set. The lawyer. Genevieve would be calling her attorney first thing in the morning. She would try to frame me. She would try to say I stole the shares. I needed to make sure her lawyer knew exactly who he was representing. I needed to make sure that when she walked into that office, she was walking into a room where she had no allies. I picked up my phone and dialed. It was late, but lawyers like Mr. Henderson always answered for clients who could pay. And I could pay. I was the majority shareholder of Sterling Properties, and I was about to become his most interesting problem. I waited until noon the next day to make the call. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to spend the morning staring at their frozen bank accounts and the empty driveway where the repossessed cars used to be. I sat in the living area of the presidential suite with my laptop open and a room service breakfast of eggs Benedict and fresh fruit untouched beside me. I checked my appearance in the webcam. My hair was perfect, my makeup flawless. I wore a white silk blouse that looked like innocence but cost like corruption. I looked like a CEO. I looked like a winner. I initiated the video call to the main line in the Sterling Mansion library. It rang once and the screen filled instantly. They were all there, huddled around the computer like survivors on a life raft. The difference in our appearances was striking. I looked fresh, rested, and expensive. They looked like they had been through a war. Genevieve was wearing the same clothes from yesterday, but they were wrinkled and stained. Her hair, usually a helmet of hairspray, was flat and disheveled. Chad had taken off his tie, but he still looked like he was choking. His face was blotchy, his eyes bloodshot. Bianca was curled in a chair, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. And Darius looked like a hollow shell of a man. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice bright and cheerful. "I trust everyone slept well." Genevieve flinched at the sound of my voice. "You monster," she rasped. "You destroyed us. The marshals were here, Nia. They took the cars. They put a boot on the Mercedes. The neighbors were watching. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is?" I took a sip of orange juice. "Humiliation is a funny thing, Genevieve," I said. "It depends on your perspective. I found it quite humiliating when you handed me divorce papers in front of the waiter. But I got over it. I imagine you will get over the loss of your G-Wagon too. Eventually." "Listen to me," Nia Chad interrupted, his voice rough. "We fired Henderson. We are ready to talk. We can make a deal. You want money, right? Everyone wants money. We can liquidate the vacation homes. We can get you cash. Just stop the audit. Call off the dogs." I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. "I do not want your vacation homes, Chad," I said. "Those are already mine. They are company assets. I do not want your cash because you do not have any. You have debt. You have liabilities. You have a federal investigation looming over your head." "What do you want then?" Darius asked. He sounded desperate. "Just tell us what you want." I looked at them. I looked at the fear in their eyes. And for a moment, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered the divorce papers. I remembered the years of insults. I remembered the way they made me feel small so they could feel big. "I want an apology," I said. They blinked. "An apology?" Bianca asked, her voice cracking. "That is it. Not just any apology," I continued. "I want a public apology. I want restitution of my reputation. You see, you spent the last 5 years telling everyone in Atlanta that I was a charity case. You told them I was a gold digger. You told them I was lucky to be allowed in the room." I leaned forward toward the camera, my eyes locking with Genevieve's. "I want you to correct the record," I said. Genevieve narrowed her eyes. "How?" "I want a party," I said. Chad frowned. "A party?" "Yes, Chad," I said. "A farewell party. A transition of power ceremony. I want you to rent the grand ballroom at the St. Regis for this Saturday night. I want you to invite everyone. The partners, the investors, the city council members, the press, everyone who matters in this city." "And what happens at this party?" Genevieve asked suspiciously. "You are going to give a speech," I said. "You are going to stand up in front of all your friends and you are going to thank me. You are going to tell them that I saved the company. You are going to tell them that I am the reason Sterling Properties still exists. You are going to apologize for the misunderstanding regarding the divorce, and you are going to announce a peaceful, amicable transition of leadership. You will announce that you are stepping down due to health reasons and that you are fully supporting my direction for the future. And if we do that, Chad asked, leaning closer to the screen. If we throw this party and kiss the ring, what do we get? If you do that, I said, I will not send the final evidence file to the FBI on Monday morning. Chad let out a breath he had been holding. You will drop the investigation. I will withhold the specific file that links you directly to the wire fraud, I said, choosing my words with surgical precision. I will allow you to resign quietly. I will allow the family to save face. You won't go to prison, Chad. You will just go away. Genevieve looked at Chad. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was a survivor. She was already spinning the narrative in her head. She was thinking that a party was manageable. A speech was just words. If she could just get me in a room, if she could just get me to lower my guard, she could figure out a way to fix this. She thought I was asking for a victory lap because I was vain. She thought I needed my ego stroked. She had no idea I was asking for a witness list. Fine, Genevieve said, her voice regaining a shred of its old steel. We will do it. We will throw your party. The St. Regis, Saturday night, black tie. We will invite everyone. And you will be nice, I added. No snide comments, no backhanded compliments. You will treat me like the savior of this family because that is exactly what I am. If I sense even a hint of disrespect, the deal is off and I send the email. We understand, Darius said. We will do it, Nia. Just please promise me you won't press send. I promise I won't press send until after the party, I said. Wait, Chad said sharp. You said you wouldn't send it at all. I said I wouldn't send it on Monday, I corrected smoothly. And I won't. As long as the party goes exactly as planned. Do we have an agreement? They looked at each other. They were trapped, and they knew it. They nodded. Good, I said. I will see you Saturday. Oh, and Genevieve wears something nice. It is going to be a night to remember. I ended the call. I sat there for a moment staring at the black screen. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. They had taken the bait. They thought they had won a reprieve. They thought they had bought themselves time. Chad was probably already planning how to liquidate hidden assets during the weekend. Genevieve was probably already drafting a speech that sounded apologetic, but subtly undermined me. They thought they understood the game. They thought the stakes were money and reputation. They didn't realize the game had changed. I stood up and walked to the window. The street. Regis was visible from here, a towering edifice of luxury and power. It was the perfect stage. It was where Genevieve had held her wedding reception 40 years ago. It was where she held her charity galas. It was the center of her world. And on Saturday night, I was going to burn it down. I wasn't going to the FBI on Monday, because I had already gone to them this morning. I had met with Agent Miller in a coffee shop in Midtown at 7 a.m. I had given him everything, the hard drives, the emails, the wire transfer receipts. I had signed the whistleblower affidavit. The investigation was already open. The warrants were already being typed. I hadn't promised to stop the FBI. I had promised not to send a specific file on Monday, and I wouldn't, because on Saturday night, the FBI wasn't going to need an email. They were going to be there in person. I had told Agent Miller about the party. I had told him that all the suspects would be in one room. I had told him that if he wanted to make a splashy arrest that would guarantee him a promotion, he should come to the St. Regis at 9 o'clock. He had smiled and agreed. The party wasn't for my ego. It was for efficiency. I wanted them all together. I wanted their friends to see it. I wanted their business partners to see it. I wanted the world to see the Sterling family in handcuffs in their evening gowns and tuxedos. I wanted the image to be seared into the social consciousness of Atlanta forever. I picked up my phone and dialed the concierge. This is Ms. Sterling in the presidential suite, I said. I need to book a stylist for Saturday, and a makeup artist. I need a dress. Something red, something unforgettable. Red. Genevieve hated red. She said it was vulgar. She said it was a color for women who needed attention. She was right. I needed attention. I needed everyone looking at me when I pointed the finger. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I drafted my own speech. I reviewed the presentation I had prepared for the party. Genevieve thought I wanted a slideshow of memories. She thought I wanted photos of us smiling at holidays. What she was going to get was a PowerPoint presentation of her crimes. I had organized the slides meticulously. Slide 1, the shell companies. Slide 2, the tax evasion. Slide 3, Chad's crypto wallet. I had embedded the bank statements. I had highlighted the illegal transfers in bright yellow. I had even included the photo of the Lamborghini. It was going to be the most educational presentation the Atlanta business community had ever seen. As the sun set over the city, I felt a strange sense of peace. For years I had lived in fear of these people. I had walked on eggshells, terrified of displeasing them, terrified of losing the family I thought I wanted. But the fear was gone. It had been replaced by cold, hard purpose. I thought about Darius. I thought about the way he had looked on the video call, defeated and weak. He wasn't a villain, really. He was just a casualty. He was collateral damage in his mother's war against irrelevance. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the video he took at the restaurant. I remembered the way he checked the lighting while his mother destroyed my life. I remembered the text messages to his mistress. He had made his choice. He had chosen to be a spectator to my pain. Now he would be a spectator to his own ruin. Saturday was coming. The stage was set. The actors knew their lines even if they didn't know the ending of the play. I poured a glass of water and toasted my reflection in the mirror. "Here is to the happy couple," I whispered. "May they rot in peace." The grand ballroom at the St. Regis was a cavern of crystal and gold, designed to make mere mortals feel insignificant. Tonight it smelled of white lilies and expensive desperation. Genevieve had outdone herself. She had liquidated the last of her personal jewelry collection to pay for this night. I knew this because I had seen the pawn shop transaction alert on her personal account before I froze it. She had filled the room with the elite of Atlanta: senators, real estate moguls, tech giants, the people whose opinions she valued more than her own soul. The theme was black and white. It was severe. It was elegant. It was a funeral for her dignity, though she did not know it yet. I watched from the shadows of the mezzanine for a moment before making my entrance. I wanted to see them perform, and what a performance it was. Genevieve stood near the ice sculpture which was carved in the shape of the Sterling Properties logo. She was wearing a black velvet gown that buttoned to her chin, a picture of mourning matriarchal grace. She was holding court with a group of investors men who had no idea their money was currently sitting in an escrow account under my name. I adjusted the earpiece in my right ear. It was connected to the high-gain microphones I had planted in the floral arrangements earlier that day, via the catering staff I had bribed. I heard Genevieve's voice clear as a bell. "Oh yes, we are just so proud of Nia," she lied, her smile tight and practiced. "She has decided to step back from the daily grind of the CFO role. She wants to focus on philanthropy. We are transitioning her to a senior advisor position. It is better for her health. You know how fragile young women can be these days." The investors nodded, sipping their drinks, oblivious to the shark swimming in the water. "Fragile," I whispered to myself. I looked at Darius and Chad. They were standing near the bar, looking like two men waiting for a firing squad. They were both in tuxedos, but they wore them like straitjackets. Chad was sweating. He kept checking his phone, probably hoping for a miracle from his offshore bankers. But there were no miracles coming tonight, only consequences. Darius looked hollow. His eyes darted around the room, scanning the exits. He looked terrified. Good. He should be. It was time. I signaled the lighting technician in the booth. I had paid him $500 to follow my cues, not Genevieve's. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. A single spotlight hit the double doors at the top of the grand staircase. The doors swung open. I stepped into the light. I was not wearing black. I was not wearing white. I was not wearing the modest, sensible business suits Genevieve had forced me to wear for 5 years to look professional. I was wearing red. It was a blood-red silk gown that clung to my body like a second skin. It was backless. It had a slit that went up to my thigh. It was the kind of dress that started wars. It was the kind of dress a woman wears when she is burning a kingdom to the ground. The room went silent. The conversation died instantly. 300 heads turned to look up at me. I saw the shock on their faces. They barely recognized me. To them, I had always been the quiet accountant in the background, the diversity hire, the help. Tonight I was the main event. I began to descend the staircase. I walked slowly. I let the silk train of my dress flow behind me like a river of fire. I saw Genevieve's jaw drop. I saw the blood drain from her face. She hated red. She said it was vulgar. She said it was for women who lacked breeding. I locked eyes with her as I walked down. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. Darius looked at me with a mixture of lust and terror. He had never seen me like this. He had never bothered to look. I reached the bottom of the stairs. The crowd parted for me instinctively. I walked through them, my head held high. I could hear the whispers starting. Is that Nia? Look at that dress. I thought she was sick. I approached the Sterling family. They were huddled together, a tight knot of fear in the center of the room. Genevieve recovered first because she was a predator, and predators never show weakness. She stepped forward, her arms open in a fake embrace. "Nia, darling," she exclaimed, her voice shrill. "You look stunning. A bold choice for a business transition party, but you always did march to the beat of your own drum." She leaned in to air-kiss my cheek. Close to my ear, she hissed, "You bitch. You are trying to upstage me. Stick to the script or I swear to God I will ruin you." I pulled back. I smiled for the cameras that were flashing around us. "Thank you, Genevieve," I said, my voice projecting clearly. "I wanted to wear something festive. It is a celebration after all." Chad stepped up beside Darius. He leaned in close to his brother-in-law, covering his mouth with his hand, but my microphones picked up every syllable. "Let her have her moment," Chad whispered to Darius, his voice thick with malice. "Let her walk up to that podium. As soon as she steps down, as soon as she resigns, security is going to grab her. I planted cocaine in her purse in the coat check. We are going to drag her out the back door and call the cops. We will say she was extorting us. Nobody will believe a drug addict in a slutty dress over the Sterling family." I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I just kept smiling. So that was their plan. Frame me. Discredit me. Destroy me. They were still playing checkers while I was playing three-dimensional chess. They thought planting drugs would save them. They didn't realize that the FBI agents I had invited were currently standing at the bar, disguised as waiters, drinking sparkling water and waiting for my signal. I looked at Chad. I looked right into his watery, weak eyes. "Hello, Chad," I said. "You look sweaty. Is the air conditioning not working? Or is it just the heat of the moment?" Chad sneered. "Enjoy your walk, Nia. It is a long way down." I looked at Darius. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was staring at my dress, staring at the woman he had thrown away. "You look beautiful, Nia," he whispered. "Save it, Darius," I said, cold as ice. "You lost the right to compliment me when you tried to record my heartbreak for likes." I turned away from them. I looked at the stage. The podium was waiting. The microphone stands were gleaming in the spotlight. It was time to end this. I walked toward the stage. The click of my heels on the dance floor sounded like gunshots. The crowd watched me mesmerized. They knew something was happening. They could feel the tension in the air, the static electricity of imminent disaster. Genevieve hurried to the side of the stage, gesturing for the AV team to start the tribute video. She had prepared a slideshow, pictures of the building projects, pictures of the family, pictures that excluded me. It was supposed to play while I resigned. She nodded at me encouragingly, a manic look in her eyes. She thought she had won. She thought I was walking to my execution. I walked up the steps. I stood behind the podium. I gripped the sides of the wood. It felt solid, real. I looked out at the sea of faces, the wealthy, the powerful, the corrupt. They were all looking at me. I saw Chad signaling to the head of security, a burly man standing by the kitchen doors. I saw the security guard nod and start moving toward the stage. They were coming for me, but they were too late. I reached into my clutch. I didn't pull out a resignation speech. I pulled out a small remote control. I looked down at Genevieve in the front row. She was smiling, that tight, superior smile. I pressed the button. The screen behind me flickered. The logo of Sterling Properties vanished. The sappy music cut out with a screech of feedback, and in its place, a new image appeared. It wasn't a photo of a building. It wasn't a photo of the family. It was a bank statement. It was magnified 10 feet tall. It showed a wire transfer of $2 million. It showed the destination account. It showed the name on the account. Chad Miller. The room gasped. It was a collective sound, a sudden intake of breath that sucked the air out of the room. I leaned into the microphone. My voice boomed through the ballroom, amplified, powerful, undeniable. "Good evening, everyone," I said. "My name is Nia Sterling, and I am not here to resign. I am here to report a crime." I saw Chad freeze. I saw Genevieve's hand fly to her mouth. I saw Darius close his eyes. The doors at the back of the room burst open. But it wasn't security. It was a team of 12 men and women in blue windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back. FBI. The party was over. The audit had arrived. The silence in the ballroom was absolute, a heavy physical weight that pressed against the eardrums of 300 of Atlanta's wealthiest citizens. I stood behind the podium, the wood cool and smooth beneath my palms. The spotlight was hot on my face, but I felt cold. I felt precise. I looked down at Genevieve in the front row. She was still holding that frozen, encouraging smile, a mask that was starting to slip at the edges as the silence stretched on too long. She wanted me to speak. She wanted me to resign. She wanted me to disappear so she could reclaim her throne. I leaned into the microphone. My voice was steady, amplified to fill every corner of the room. Mother Genevieve always taught me that transparency is the key to success. Genevieve nodded graciously, accepting the compliment that she did not realize was a shovel. She taught me that a family legacy is built on truth. I continued, my eyes scanning the room, locking onto the nervous faces of the board members, the confused expressions of the investors. And tonight, in the spirit of that transparency, I want to show you exactly what the Sterling legacy looks like. I pressed the button on the remote in my hand. The massive LED screen behind me, which was supposed to be playing a montage of architectural triumphs and family picnics, flickered. The image changed instantly. It was not a photo. It was a complex digital flowchart, a forensic map of financial cancer. A collective gasp rippled through the room. It started in the front row and rolled back like a wave. On the screen, bright red lines connected the corporate accounts of Sterling Properties to a series of offshore entities. The names of the shell companies were listed in bold black letters: Zenith Solutions, Cayman Holdings, Alpha Crypto LLC. I turned slightly to look at the screen, gesturing to the data with the casual air of a weather reporter predicting a hurricane. What you are seeing behind me is the flow of capital from the West Side Affordable Housing Grant. I explained, my voice calm and educational. $20 million of federal money intended to house the poor. You can see here where it enters the Sterling operating account, and here where it exits. I pressed the button again. The screen zoomed in on a specific node of the chart. It leaves the company through a series of invoices for consulting services that were never rendered, I said. And it lands here, in a private crypto wallet. I looked down at Chad. He had stopped breathing. His face was the color of old ash. That wallet is registered to a Mr. Chad Miller, the chief financial officer of this company, I said. And from there the money flows into luxury car dealerships, high-end jewelers, and the lease on a penthouse apartment in Midtown that is certainly not his marital home. Bianca let out a scream. It was a short, sharp sound like an animal being stepped on. She looked at Chad. She looked at the screen. The denial in her eyes shattered, replaced by a horrific realization. But we are not done. I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs that were rising in the room. Because Chad was not working alone. A CFO cannot move that kind of money without executive approval. I pressed the button again. The screen shifted. Now it showed tax returns. Specifically, the returns for the last 5 years. Here we see the personal tax filings of Mrs. Genevieve Sterling, I narrated. You will notice the deductions for charitable giving. Millions of dollars donated to the Sterling Family Foundation. A noble gesture. Except for one small detail. I clicked the remote. A bank statement appeared. The foundation accounts are empty, I said. The money was transferred out within 24 hours of being donated. It was routed through a bank in the Cook Islands, a jurisdiction known for its lack of transparency, and from there it was used to purchase real estate in Europe under a pseudonym. I looked at Genevieve. She was gripping the arms of her chair so hard her knuckles were white. Her mouth was open but no sound was coming out. She looked like a fish on a dock gasping for air that wasn't there. This is tax evasion, I said simply. This is wire fraud. This is a conspiracy to defraud the United States government and the investors in this room. The room erupted. People were standing up, shouting, pointing. The investors were pulling out their phones, frantically calling their lawyers. The press photographers were in a frenzy, their flashes lighting up the stage like a strobe light. I raised my hand. Just a slight movement, but it commanded attention. Please, I said. I have one more announcement. The noise died down. They wanted to hear the rest. They were captivated by the disaster. You might be wondering why I am showing you this, I said. You might be wondering why the majority shareholder would publicly destroy her own company. I smiled. It was the smile of the woman who had signed the divorce papers at dinner. Because I am not the majority shareholder anymore. Darius stood up. What he shouted. I looked at him. Poor Darius. He was always the last one to get the joke. At 9 o'clock this morning, exactly 12 hours ago, I exercised my right as the owner of 51% of the voting stock of Sterling Properties, I said. I entered into a binding agreement to sell my entire stake in the company. Sell? Chad yelled, jumping up. You cannot sell. Who would buy this mess? I pointed the remote at the screen one last time. A logo appeared. It was a blue falcon, the logo of Vanguard Development, the biggest, fiercest rival of the Sterling family, a company Genevieve had hated for 30 years, a company she had sworn to destroy. I sold my controlling interest to Vanguard, I announced. They have been trying to acquire our prime real estate assets for a decade. Today they got them. I paused for effect. I sold the company for $1. The silence returned, heavier than before. $1, Genevieve whispered. Yes, I said. $1. And the assumption of all corporate liabilities. You see, Vanguard has a very aggressive legal team. They specialize in distressed assets. They know about the fraud. They know about the debt. And they are very excited to liquidate the remaining assets to recoup their losses. They are going to strip this company for parts. They are going to take the land. They are going to take the buildings. And they are going to leave the minority shareholders with absolutely nothing. I looked at the Sterling family. That means you, Genevieve. That means you, Darius. You own 49% of a company that effectively no longer exists. Your shares are worthless. Your assets are forfeit. You are bankrupt. Chad looked like he was going to vomit. Darius slumped back into his chair, his head in his hands. Genevieve looked at me with eyes full of pure, unadulterated hate. You bitch! She screamed. She stood up, overturning her chair. She lunged toward the stage. Her black velvet gown tangled in her legs, but she kept coming. Her hands were claws reaching for me. I call security! Chad shouted, pointing at me. Arrest her! She ruined us! Get her out of here! The side doors burst open. Heavy boots hit the floor. But it wasn't the hotel security. It was a phalanx of agents in blue windbreakers with yellow letters on the back. FBI. Behind them walked agents from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. The agents moved with military precision. They swarmed the front row. Genevieve stopped her charge. She froze, staring at the badges, staring at the guns on their hips. Chad tried to run. He actually tried to scramble over the table, scattering crystal glasses and centerpieces. Two agents grabbed him before his feet even touched the floor. They slammed him onto the table face first into a plate of untouched salmon. Chad Miller, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement, an agent barked, pulling Chad's arms behind his back. Genevieve stood trembling as a female agent approached her. Genevieve Sterling, you are under arrest for tax evasion, conspiracy, and fraud. They cuffed her. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the ballroom louder than any music. They turned her around. She looked back at the crowd, at the friends she had tried to impress, at the society that was her lifeblood. She saw them taking photos. She saw them whispering. She saw the end of her life. Darius was not arrested. He wasn't smart enough to be part of the crimes. He sat there alone in the front row, watching his mother and his brother-in-law being dragged away. He looked up at me. There were tears running down his face. Why, he mouthed. I leaned into the microphone one last time. Because I am a forensic accountant, Darius, I said, and I always balance the books. I stepped back from the podium. I looked at the lead FBI agent standing at the foot of the stairs. He nodded to me. Ms. Sterling, he said loud enough for the front row to hear. Thank you for your cooperation. Your whistleblower agreement has been processed. You are free to go. Your immunity is confirmed. I nodded back. I walked down the stairs, not the way I came up. I walked down the side stairs, away from the chaos, away from the cameras. I walked past Bianca, who was sobbing hysterically on the floor. I walked past the investors, who were already on the phone with their crisis management teams. I walked past the waitstaff, who looked like they were enjoying the show more than anyone else. I walked out the back doors of the ballroom and into the kitchen. The noise of the party faded behind me, replaced by the clatter of pans and the shouting of chefs. I kept walking, out the service entrance, into the cool night air of the loading dock. My valet was waiting with my car. He looked at me, surprised to see me so soon, surprised to see me alone. Leaving early, ma'am, he asked. The party is over, I said. I got into my car. It was an old sedan, 5 years old, reliable, paid for. It wasn't a Lamborghini, it wasn't a G-Wagon, but it was mine. I started the engine. I checked my bank account on my phone one last time. The whistleblower reward wouldn't come for months, maybe years. But the escrow account was secure. My severance was safe. I had enough. I had enough to start over. I had enough to build something real. I pulled out of the parking lot. I didn't look back at the St. Regis. I didn't look back at the flashing blue lights of the police cars converging on the entrance. I drove onto Peachtree Road, heading north, heading toward the airport, heading toward Paris. Genevieve had given me divorce papers. She had wanted me to leave, so I left, and I took her world with me. 6 months have passed since the night of the red dress, and the lights of the St. Regis ballroom feel like a distant memory. But the aftershocks of that evening are still reshaping the landscape of Atlanta. I read the news of the sentencing in the morning paper while drinking coffee on the balcony of my new penthouse. It was a front-page story. The fall of the Sterling Empire was the kind of tragedy the public loved to consume, a morality play written in bold ink. Genevieve Sterling and Chad Miller were sentenced yesterday. The trial was short. The evidence I provided was so comprehensive, so meticulously organized, that their high-priced defense team barely put up a fight. They pleaded guilty to 34 counts of wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. The judge was not lenient. He called their actions a gross violation of public trust and a predation on the community they claimed to serve. 10 years. That was the sentence. 10 years in a federal penitentiary. I saw the courtroom sketches. Genevieve looked small. The arrogance that had defined her existence had been stripped away, leaving behind a frail woman in a gray suit. She wasn't wearing jewelry. She wasn't wearing designer labels. She was just a number now. Chad reportedly wept when the gavel came down. He tried to blame Genevieve until the very end, claiming he was just following orders, but the paper trail of his Lamborghini and his penthouse told a different story. They were escorted out in handcuffs, two thieves who thought they were royalty. They say living well is the best revenge. But seeing your abusers face justice is a close second. The collateral damage was extensive. Vanguard Development moved quickly just as I knew they would. They liquidated Sterling properties within 90 days. The cranes are already moving in on the land where the Sterling office used to be. They are tearing it down to build a shopping complex. The name Sterling will be erased from the skyline as if it never existed. And then there are the survivors, Darius and Bianca. They were not charged with crimes. Incompetence is not a felony, and being a spoiled brat is not against the law. But the financial devastation was total. The government seized the assets obtained through fraud, which meant everything. The mansion was foreclosed upon last month. I heard the auction was humiliating. Strangers walked through the rooms where Genevieve used to hold court, picking over the furniture and bidding on the silver. Bianca moved in with a friend from college, sleeping on a couch in a studio apartment. Her Instagram account, which used to be a shrine to her luxury lifestyle, has been silent for months. And Darius. Poor Darius. The man who wanted a wife who knew how to relax. I saw him last week. I didn't mean to. I was walking through the Lenox Square Mall picking up a gift for a client. I passed a shoe store, a mid-range chain store, the kind that smells of rubber and discount polish. And there he was. He was kneeling on the floor, fitting a sneaker onto the foot of a screaming toddler. He was wearing a uniform polo shirt that was a size too small. His hair was thinning. He looked tired. He looked defeated. He looked like a man who had spent his entire life waiting to inherit the world, only to find out he had been written out of the will. I watched him for a moment. I watched him force a smile for the customer. I watched him endure the disrespect of a stranger. It was the same fake smile he used to give me when he asked me to fix his credit score. He looked up. Our eyes met through the glass display window. For a second, he froze. He saw the tailored suit I was wearing. He saw the confidence in my posture. He saw the woman he had thrown away standing tall while he was on his knees. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just turned and walked away. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing. He was just a stranger who sold shoes. My life, however, has become something entirely different. 2 weeks ago, a check arrived from the United States Treasury. It was my whistleblower award. Under the federal statutes, I was entitled to a percentage of the funds recovered by the IRS and the seized assets. $2 million. It was more money than Darius had ever earned in his life. It was more money than Genevieve had left after her lawyers were paid. I didn't buy a sports car. I didn't buy a vacation home. I took that money and I invested it in the one thing the Sterlings never understood: value. I opened my own firm. It is called Sterling Shield. I kept the name. I earned it. But the mission is different. We are a boutique financial consultancy exclusively for women. We specialize in premarital asset protection, forensic audits for divorce proceedings, and financial literacy for women entering high net worth families. My waiting list is already 3 months long. Every day, women walk into my office, women who are being gaslit by their partners, women who are being told they are crazy for asking where the money goes, women who are being handed legal documents they don't understand. I sit with them. I hold their hands. And then I open my laptop and I find the truth. I am the shield they never had. I am the weapon they need. I am sitting in my new office now. It is on the 35th floor of a glass tower in Midtown. The view is spectacular. I can see the entire city of Atlanta stretched out before me. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The air conditioning hums a quiet note of success. My desk is made of reclaimed wood, solid and real. My phone vibrates on the desk. The sound is loud in the quiet room. I look at the screen. Incoming call, Darius. I stare at the name. It has been 6 months. He must have found my new number, or maybe he called my office line and the receptionist put him through to voicemail, but he is trying his luck on my cell. I wonder what he wants. Does he want money? Does he want forgiveness? Does he want to tell me that he misses the way I used to organize his life? Does he want to ask if I saw him at the shoe store? It doesn't matter. I lean back in my chair. I take a sip of sparkling water. I watched the phone ring. I could block him. I could answer and tell him to go to hell. I could scream at him for the years of neglect, for the video he took at the restaurant, for the way he let his mother abuse me. But that would require energy. That would require emotion. And Darius Sterling is no longer worth my energy. Indifference is the ultimate revenge. I let it ring. The vibration rattles the ice in my glass. I smile. It is a genuine smile. A smile that reaches my eyes. The ringing stops. The screen goes dark. He is gone. I turn back to my computer. I have a client coming in at 5. She thinks her husband is hiding assets in a shell company in Nevada. I have already found the account numbers. I have already found the transfer receipts. I am about to change her life. I type my password. I open the file. I am Nia Sterling. I am the CEO of my own life, and business is good. The most powerful lesson from Nia's victory is that financial literacy is the ultimate form of self-defense. While the Sterlings operated on arrogance and image, Nia operated on facts and documentation. Her journey teaches us that silence is not submission. Often it is the sound of a strategy being formed. We learn that we cannot control how others treat us, but we can control our leverage. Never beg for a seat at a table where you are not respected. Instead, build your own table and make sure you own the building it stands on. If you believe in the power of keeping your receipts and knowing your worth, hit subscribe and share this story with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength